Welcome to Schlocking Tales, kids, the show where we take a look at some of our favorite stories and see what life lessons we can learn from them. I, of course, am Mr. Mike. Let's get our thinking caps on so we can get started. Today's story is about what you may want to be when you grow up. Some people may want to be like a doctor or a lawyer, or some people may want to work in a store, or some of you may even pursue a life of crime. And you shouldn't do that, but just in case you do, here's a story about how to do that. It's called Goodfellas. Today's story is about a man named Henry Hill. It starts on a dark highway at night. Henry and his friends Jimmy and Tommy were driving late at night, and all of a sudden they heard a bumping sound in the trunk. At first they wondered what it was, but then they remembered. They decided to pull over and check it out. What do you think about the way Tommy checked on that guy in the trunk? Do you think there might have been a nicer way to do that? Yeah, I mean, you might knock on the trunk, you might just say, "Hey, how's it going back there?" And maybe, "Do you need a water or something?" You know, that's a nicer way to see if someone's alive without killing them. This made Henry pause and remember what it was like to be a young boy growing up in Brooklyn. When he grew up, he just knew he wanted to be a gangster, just like the guys he would watch across the street. They always got away with everything and had lots of money. So he went and got an after-school job at the cab stand where all the gangsters hung out. There he learned to run errands, park cars, and then blow some cars up too. One day, a gangster named Jimmy the Gent had Henry and his pal Tommy sell stolen cigarettes. But then the police came and arrested Henry. And Henry kept his mouth shut and didn't tell the police anything about the other gangsters. Henry thought they would be mad at him for getting arrested, but it turns out they were so proud of him because he didn't rat on them. If someone calls you a rat, they may just mean that you're like an animal that carries disease, or they could mean that you told on them. What kind of rat are you more like? Henry kept getting older, and one day he was all grown up. He had worked so hard when he was a young man that he learned how to do other things. Instead of just parking cars, now he could hijack trucks. Instead of just blowing up cars, now he could burn down businesses for the insurance money. And instead of just running errands, now he could walk right in and rob the airport. Henry was so proud. Have you ever felt like Henry? Have you ever learned how to do your job so well that you could learn how to do bigger, more important things? That's why it's important to listen when grown-ups are talking to you. Henry would get together with his friends, and sometimes they would laugh it up and have a good old time.
Hey, I wish I was big just once. We're the big cops.
Really funny. Really funny.
Funny how? I mean, what's funny about it? Well, I'm funny how? I mean, funny like I'm a clown, I amuse you?
Why do you think Tommy was funny? Well, one day Tommy introduced Henry to a young woman named Karen. And even though their first date didn't go too well, later they hit it off. Karen was so impressed because Henry didn't have to wait to get into restaurants, always had lots of money, and everyone knew him. One day her neighbor was mean to her, and Karen knew Henry would know just how to help. He always had the perfect way of explaining things. And eventually they got married. Henry decided to own a bar where all his friends could come see him. And one day a man named Billy Batts, who had just gotten out of prison, came in to drink with his friends. Billy was drunk and hurt Tommy's feelings. He treated Tommy like a little kid and told him to go get his shine box so he could shine his shoes. Has anyone ever hurt your feelings before? Sometimes people hurt your feelings on accident, and sometimes they do it on purpose like Billy Batts. It's hard to know what to do when you're upset from the things that they said. Let's watch select fragments of what Tommy said.
You fucker here. Keep him here. Keep him here. Come on.
And what do you think Billy Batts should have said? Think hard. Great job. He should have run like hell. Well, Billy Batts didn't run at all, and he just kept on being mean. If something like this happens to you, you may want to ask a grown-up for help. Someone like mom or dad, or someone like Tommy's friend Jimmy, so maybe together you can talk to the person It's always easier when you have someone to help you. They wrapped Billy Bats in tablecloths and put him in Henry's trunk. Before they buried him, though, they needed some supplies. When you need a shovel and a butcher knife, it's a good idea to ask Mom and Dad. Even when you get older, you can still ask to borrow them like Tommy did. Don't forget to spend a little time while you're there, because when you get older, your parents might miss seeing you. Pretty soon after they buried Billy Bats, Henry started having an affair. What does having an affair mean? So it's like when you love one of your wife's friends very much, and your wife is gone, and the thing is, your wife's not going to understand. Trust me, she's just not. So it can lead to something like this happening.
Wake up, Henry.
Do you see how much heartache and pain and misery having an affair can cause? It's a lot better to not get caught, isn't it? Karen was so mad at Henry that he decided to move out for a while. One day, Jimmy and the big boss, Paulie, came over to visit. Jimmy invited Henry to go with him to Florida and visit this guy he knew, and afterwards he could go back and live with Karen. Except they both got in trouble and had to go to prison. But Henry wasn't about to let going to prison keep him down, and he learned to survive and make money even while he was in prison. He learned how to sell drugs. His wife Karen smuggled them in and he would sell them. What are some things you would do to survive in prison? Sometimes when you learn a new skill, you can use it anywhere. So Henry and his friends started selling drugs when he left prison. And this was kind of dangerous because Paulie told them not to, but they still did it in secret. Also, they could still make money by stealing from the airport. Jimmy and his friends made the biggest heist in history by stealing over $5 million from an airline called Lufthansa. Jimmy made even more by killing most of the people who helped him. It seemed like everyone was dying because pretty soon the older mob bosses whacked Tommy. Sometimes one word can mean different things. Like the word whacked can mean when someone gets hit, or it can be like late at night when... Forget that one. Or it could mean like when a gangster kills someone. Even if you're a really careful gangster, you can still get caught by the police. One day the police followed Henry around all day with a helicopter. Eventually they arrested him for selling drugs. They were going to send him to prison for a long time. Then Henry thought of something. He was friends with people who did all kinds of terrible things. And if he ratted to the police, maybe he wouldn't be in as much trouble. This is why it's always good to have friends who did worse things than you. If you know someone who may be in more trouble than you can rat on them, and then you don't have to go to prison. You can go into the Witness Protection Program, where they change your name and location and try to keep the people you ratted on from killing you. So Henry and his family went into the Witness Protection Program and lived to some degree happily ever after. The end. Boy, I sure learned a lot about pursuing a life of crime today. Like we said, you shouldn't do it, but just in case, let's review what we learned today. Like any job, you have to start by learning the basics. If you have an affair, make sure your spouse never finds out. Do what you have to do to survive in prison. As a gangster, the word whacked means to kill someone. Don't rat on your friends unless it gets you out of trouble. If you like learning how to be a better gangster and a better person, you should like, share, and subscribe to my channel and tell me in the comments what you learned today. This is Mr. Mike saying, just be yourself. You're the one and only ever special you, so just be yourself. And if you're in the Witness Protection Program, then be the person they made up for you so nobody kills you. Okay, bye.